Right, Patrick Mahomes, it's our 12 days of Christmas. We're talking all about this already Hall of Fame level NFL quarterback, a guy with already 3 Super Bowl rings, even earlier in his life than Tom Brady had them, with a chance to go for a three-peat this year. We could sing so many praises about Andy Reid, about Mahomes, about what they've done. But let's talk about kind of the legacy of this guy before he's even 30 years old. For you, where is he on that kind of Mount Rushmore? Where does he rank in the all-time NFL quarterbacks already at this young age? And what impact has he had on the NFL?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. Well, when you introed that and you said Patrick Mahomes, all of a sudden I start thinking of a billion things, right? For me, Patrick Mahomes has become one of those people. He's not Michael Jordan yet. He's not Tom Brady yet. He's not even Shaquille O'Neal yet. And you can start going through all the American sports stars, but he's on that list now. I mean, we have a story. We've been doing it for a while at talkSPORT. The top 10 greatest quarterbacks of all time that we ranked. Patrick Mahomes, I did not have on that top 10 list before the Super Bowl last year, and I got some gruff from a former colleague who was like, "How could you not have Mahomes?" Well, like longevity-wise, he's not there yet. Touchdowns, passing yards, he can't compete. He just hasn't played long enough. Once he won that last Super Bowl and he went back-to-back, and he's on the verge of a three-peat, that changed everything for me. He is now one of the top 10 quarterbacks of all time in NFL history. He's also somebody that everyone in the United States of America who follows sports just a little, I'm talking about Twitter nerds or people who subscribe to Substacks or whatever. I'm talking about just your average person who lives in Iowa or Mississippi or Oregon or Florida or Maine. They know who Patrick Mahomes is. He's in that next level of sports stars. And as you just said perfectly, he's done it before he is 30. The other part about Mahomes that always blows my mind is he was destined for this because he was the son of a Major League Baseball player and he was always in clubhouses, and I've always loved that about him. And there's always something different if you're in a Major League Baseball clubhouse because it's such a different world. It's day to day. You're basically living there. But, you know, he was a really good college baseball player. He was a really good high school basketball player. And we've seen all of that funnel into somebody who was questioned coming out of college, who was a risky draft pick for the Kansas City Chiefs when they traded up to get him, and it has all worked out. He also overcome injuries. He's become one of those guys, Will, that you just say that name, Patrick Mahomes, and we could write 12 stories about him at talksport.com.
It's fascinating because the Super Bowl in Houston, that was 51, 52, the year that he gets drafted, his agent, who he's represented by the man who became Jerry Maguire, right? Brought us Pat Mahomes for an interview. And we sat down with him for 10, 12 minutes, and you couldn't not be impressed with him. Obviously, the voice caught you off guard immediately, but other than that, super smart kid, super humble. The way that he approached the NFL when he first came in the first season he was there, he worked under Alex Smith, a great NFL veteran, sat there, learned, didn't take a single commercial deal as a top 12 pick.
I love that about him. I love that about him.
You're passing up on millions because you wanted to focus on football and you wanted to learn. And I remember sitting there with him and thinking, this is an impressive young man, but long way to go,
sure.
Toolsy, but not a guy I expect to have an instant impact. We then interviewed him after his first season in the NFL. We got him on the phone. We ended up speaking to him for an hour for a piece we did for a magazine. And it blew my mind how much just in that 1 year this guy had learned, developed, and this is just in conversation with him, let alone when you start seeing him play football. For me, when he's on the field, he's the most complete quarterback I've ever seen. He can throw from any arm angle. He can throw off platform. He can make plays with his legs.
He can throw without looking at you, right?
And that's when you talk about the legacy of Pat Mahomes, because for me, he hasn't changed the NFL like Peyton Manning did. He's not calling plays at the line of scrimmage. He's not a guy who you're going to look at as a Johnny Unitas or an Oso Graham to go real old school, or even a guy like Dan Marino or somebody who really changed the way the whole position was viewed in the league itself. But for me, what he's done is change the perception outside of it. In college football, in high school football, all of these times where every quarterback that comes through the development system is told 3-step drop step, 5-step drop back. You are to play in the pocket. You're to throw. That's how quarterback is played. Now, every single level of football, you are coached that every play has the play and it has the breakdown, and it has the afters. And yeah, guys like Russell Wilson and stuff were doing it before Patrick Mahomes, but he's just done it so much better than anyone else. And now I truly think that guys like Jaden Daniels doesn't get drafted where he got drafted, like Anthony Richardson doesn't get drafted 4th overall, to use a more negative example, Trey Lance. Everyone is now out there looking for a guy who is got all of the tools and they can turn into a superstar because Patrick Mahomes was that. So I think the biggest effect he has on the NFL for me is that everyone else wants Patrick Mahomes in their life, and you're trained to be it, you learn to be it in college, and that's how quarterback is now taught. And that's the difference for me.
Yeah, I love a lot of what you just said. Number one, there was the trend, and it's still going on for, dual threats. Dual threats finally became accepted, and then it was, okay, we got to find somebody who can run and pass. Patrick Mahomes runs just enough, right? I mean,
he's not Lamar Jackson. He's not even Josh Allen.
But he can have those brilliant 20-yard scampers. You think he's going to go out of bounds. But what Patrick Mahomes has been able to do is he is, in his own way, while having so much pressure and being a baseball player's son, he has always remained true to his inner God-given talent. And he's never gone away from that. When I look at Patrick Mahomes, I look at somebody that he's Texas Tech. Like, you have to go to Texas, you have to go to Lubbock, you have to understand what it's like to play there. He wasn't even a huge winner there, and he had Cliff Kingsbury, but he was throwing for 600 yards and getting in these shootouts. He is somebody who has always gone back to that athletic skill. And as much as we want to talk about all the other things in sports, it ultimately comes down to your skill. And you have it inside of you, but you have to develop it. He's so driven. He's so committed. He doesn't mess up off the field, right? Travis Kelce's doing a billion things in the world. It always feels like Patrick Mahomes is ultimately committed to football, an incredibly high competitor, just like Tom Brady was. But when I watch him play, and you have the no-look passes, and he's throwing like this, and he's doing those things. That's a baseball player. That's a basketball player. That's somebody who's just a true athlete. But rather than the NFL, Andy Reid, changing him, he's been able to be Patrick Mahomes. And by being Patrick Mahomes, he's on that next level to where it does feel like, hey, we're in Michael Jordan territory. We're in Tom Brady territory. We're looking at the guy we'll be talking about for the next 20, 30 years who did, for my money, did change the NFL because he was the next great one.
And do you know what, for me, the Tom Brady comparison is going to happen because he's won 3 Super Bowls already, maybe a 4th this year. He'll be targeting that 7 of Tom's. And actually, I think back to the loss to Tom Brady, where Tom Brady beat him to win his 7th ring. And I remember watching the highlights of that game, and the 2 best highlights of that game are Patrick Mahomes' incompletions, where he does something just insane. And you're like, that's the clip that I'm going to send to, talkSPORT presenter Adrian Durham.
It's the stuff you do when you're 12 years old, you're playing in the backyard.
Yeah.
And like Brett Favre used to do
100%.
that stuff, but Brett Favre wasn't Patrick. And Brett Favre was a great quarterback, but Brett Favre wasn't Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes has that athletic ability. Again, I go back to being a baseball college pitcher, almost being like a shortstop. He's able to use his body and just wing it. Just wing it. But nobody can get away with that except for Patrick Mahomes.
But I think the reason I talk about Tom Brady is that when I mentioned guys like Peyton Manning and the way that they changed the game, the way that Tom Brady changed the game of football wasn't about what he did on the field necessarily, the success, the 7 Super Bowl rings, the ridiculously high level up to 45 years old. Like, that is insane. But it's the fact that he got to 45 years old by being the most dedicated human being in the world off the field.
Basically a Terminator. He was a football machine, and
he had one vice, which was that he would eat a single scoop of avocado ice cream once a week. That was his one sugar intake.
And I think he still does that because he's got the best figure of any 40, however old he is, guy in the world right now.
But what I love about Patrick Mahomes is, like, he has his same throwing coach from college, right? Yeah. Who he employs privately, separate to the Chiefs. So you talk about all that stuff he does. He's taken that Tom Brady mentality and he's made it way more fun, and he's doing crazy stuff with it, and he's still, going to the US Open tennis with Travis Kelce, dressed like the pair of them are cartoon dogs who've been turned into humans, looking insane. Like, he's a bit of everything to everyone.
Yes, and that's the thing. Like, and granted, we're not saying you're not putting him on a pedestal. It's just he's been able to be himself. He's become the next name. I love that he tweets about the Kansas City Royals. Like, he follows his teams. He loves the Dallas Mavericks. He's into women's soccer. What he's able to do, off the field with his wife Brittany and his kids. I feel like in this world where we know too much about everybody and they're all over the place, I'm not burned out on Patrick Mahomes yet. Now, I know there's some Chiefs fatigue out there, and we talked about that at talkSPORT, but I'm not burned out on Mahomes because he's out there, but he's not out there too much, and I respect that about him. It feels like there's still some privacy to him, even though we kind of know everything about this guy right now. And there's also, for me, some mystery to him as an NFL player, because it's still like, how does he do this stuff? How, with all the game planning and all the videotape and the years of being able to prep for him, he does stuff that You can't practice for that, Will. And he blows away NFL players. When you can do that, you are a really, really special generational athlete.
He's playing his worst season as a starter in the NFL, and he's still the reason that they win games. He's still the guy who picks up that first down on a 3rd and 15, where he scrambles outside and goes and picks it up down the
we didn't mention the dad bod. He's got the dad bod going on. That's obviously
well, obviously, I love that. But look, that's our little thought on Patrick Mahomes and where he is at this point in his career. It's a conversation we're having a lot if they get to New Orleans again this year, and he'll start to be talked about as one of the greatest of all time already. Don't forget, though, like, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video. Leave us a comment. Let us know your thoughts. Should he be considered in that top 5, top 10 all time already at this point in his career? It's pretty sensational. And keep checking out all the great content we've got going out at NFL End Zone.